Welcome to So You Think You Can Date, a podcast for those ready to do dating differently. I'm Nicki Pappas, a queer, poly, millennial mom who is dating again for the first time in 15 years. What could go wrong? LOLs. While lots can go wrong, and has, a lot has also gone really well. The So You Think You Can Date podcast is about my adventures in dating. You don't have to hold the identities I hold to benefit from the life experiences I share here. Let's talk about communication, connection, and consent, regardless of what type of relationship you are in or looking for. With vulnerability, authenticity, and curiosity, I'm exploring unfamiliar terrain and would love for you to join me. In this second episode, I'm going to talk about when to disconnect from a connection and share a few stories from my own experiences with ending connections. As I stated in the first episode of the podcast, I'm very selective upfront about who I even start to exchange messages with, and that helps weed out the unlikelies. That doesn't mean that every single person I exchange messages with is batting 1,000, but they at least know how to hold the bat. So we start with that baseline to where before I even exchange messages with someone, I feel good about believing the best about that person up front. Also, in the first episode, I talked about how the energy you give is the energy you get. And I say that with the caveat of not bypassing harm and without discounting that some people are highly skilled at deception. If you were deceived, that does not say anything about your character and instead says so much about the character of the person or people who deceived you. For the most part, though, the energy I have put out on the Field dating app has been the energy I've received back. And a dear friend is the one who gave me this language to describe my experiences on the app. She explained that because I wasn't giving off the vibe that I just want to have lots of casual sex, I wasn't getting a deluge of pings from men who solely wanted a one-night stand. Now, this is not me saying that a woman should not give off the vibe that she's only interested in casual sex or one-night stands. If that's what she wants, then that's what she wants, and I have no judgment about that. But because the opening line of my bio is no fuckboys, I'm not interested in your chaos, and because my photos are aligned with my intentions and I clearly state that I am interested in ethically non-monogamous dates and intimacy, there is little room for confusion over what I am looking for. So a litmus test I use in dating is asking myself what the connection is adding to my life. You may remember in last week's episode, I shared about a friend of mine saying, I think it's okay to open ourselves up to some hurt in order to experience joy, even if just for a while. He went on to share that if someone ever feels like the hurt to joy ratio is out of whack, there should be respect for any decision that is made. With that in mind, I evaluate a connection to determine how much joy or hurt is being added to my life. Is this connection adding confusion or clarity, pain or peace? Know yourself and what those things feel like in your body so you can discern if this is a connection you want to further invest in. With that in mind, also know that you reserve the right to change your mind. I have another friend that encourages me to know that I may get new information and want something different 5 weeks or even 5 minutes from now, and that's okay. So what does it look like in practice for me to end a connection with someone? I'm going to share some examples with you all, and hopefully they will help you if you are navigating something similar. I will refer to these people with fictional names that are shorthand for the situation, but I don't mean the names to be disrespectful or hurtful. The last thing I will say is that if you're listening and you feel defensive about any of these scenarios, I want to invite you to get curious about your reaction. What is your reaction trying to communicate to you? What can you learn from it? Let's start with the guy that my work bestie has named Captain Underpants because he told me that he wears diapers. Now, I want to acknowledge that incontinence is not something to be made fun of, and there are people who are affected by this, absolutely. However, Captain Underpants is not one of those people, as you will soon realize. After we'd messaged back and forth for a few days, he fell off completely for about a month. When he reached back out, he told me he had pulled away because he was embarrassed about something. That something was that he wore diapers. He explained that he'd had people find out and ghost him. Well, I actually already knew about the diapers because I'd seen a second account he had where he was wearing the diapers. When I let him know that it wasn't a problem to me and that I already knew because of his other account, he wanted to exchange phone numbers. I do not typically exchange numbers until after meeting someone. I told him as much. Then he started messaging me a lot. If I was delayed in responding to a message, he'd message again. He told me that he wanted to meet me and that he had things he wanted to confide in me related to his incontinence. He then shared a lot of trauma with me from his childhood. When I'd express empathy or kindness, he'd ask again about meeting up, but it just didn't feel right. So I said I wasn't ready. Something felt off, but I wasn't sure what. Well, when I asked a friend for advice, he read through the messages and pointed out some reasons for concern along the way. For example, when I mentioned being at my daughter's dance class, my friend showed me how that piqued the interest of Captain Underpants. Captain Underpants had questions about my daughter, what kind of dance, how old is she, etc. Later, he told me about babysitting his niece and her friend and how he fell asleep just to wake up from peeing on himself because the niece and her friend put his hand in warm water. He wrote about how she made fun of him for his accidents and asked if my kids would make fun of him. The next day, he messaged me in a panic and said he needed to talk to me. He'd had an accident at work and been fired and was at the ER. Bear in mind, this man did not know me, but he wanted me to call him right away at this point, and he'd also wanted me to call him during other points in our conversation too. My friend brought attention to the inconsistencies in the stories that Captain Underpants was telling me. Inconsistencies that indicated he was not being truthful. Like, why is he falling asleep when he's supposed to be babysitting? And why would he make it seem like the niece and her friend intentionally put his hand in water knowing he would wet himself, and mentioning his niece making fun of him for his accidents, to later say he wasn't sure if she knew what she was doing when she put his hand in water. And my friend pointed out that it didn't make any sense that he would get fired from his job for having an accident at work and then need to go to the ER for having an accident. There would be no reason to go to the ER for doing something that he made it seem like happens regularly. My friend then explained to me that there are some men who want to act out wetting themselves and being taken care of like an infant, or they want a woman or partner to assume a little girl role, or they want access to a young girl, which is why he was so interested in the fact that I have a daughter. He wanted to establish trust with me as someone who babysits his niece, so that I would maybe have him watch my own kids and grant him access to my kids. Anytime I mentioned kids, he had lots of questions, and something felt off about the questions, not because other people don't ever ask questions about my kids, but because of the types of questions, the intense curiosity, and the frequency of the questions about my kids. My friend pointed out that Captain Underpants was preying on my tenderness and kindness. I am still quite naive as someone who is new to all of this. So there are some things along the way with Captain Underpants that gave me reason to pause, but not completely end everything. Even though completely ending the connection would have been fine. Again, we reserve the right to change our minds, to end a connection at any time for any reason as we get new information, whether that be external or internal data. So when my friend pointed out what was happening, I asked what the best way was to go about ending things. And he told me that I didn't owe an explanation. I could just go right into the chat and press disconnect and not have to worry about it anymore. There was a part of me that worried that the guy was telling the truth and that he would think that I was ghosting him for wearing diapers, but I keep thinking about the idea of how, as women, we are conditioned to be nice, even if that jeopardizes our safety. No, I can't say with absolute certainty that he was lying, but I'm not willing to take any risks to put myself or my kids in danger. The next person I'll share about is someone I will refer to as anxious attachment. From the beginning, he texted too much for me, but I would not say that he texted too much because what was too much for me may be exactly what someone else would want. If I didn't respond in a timely enough manner, he'd text again and again. Granted, he certainly wasn't as bad as this one guy that I heard about who had confirmed a date the night before with a woman. The next day, she went into work. She's a surgeon, so she was away from her phone all day while in surgery. The first time he texted her, he said he just wanted to make sure that they were still on for that night. Mind you, they'd confirmed the night before. A couple of hours passed, and there was no response from her because she was in surgery. He was a bit irritated. But by the third text, he was calling her a bitch and saying he didn't want anything to do with her. So that escalated quickly. All because that guy had not done the type of inner work that would allow him to not take it personally when he didn't get a response in what he would think of as a timely manner. Thankfully, this guy, anxious attachment, wasn't anywhere near this extreme who I interacted with, but it did feel like he needed more than I could offer him. I did appreciate that he was communicative if he thought something was off between us, but he constantly thought something was off between us and would ask me about it. However, it didn't feel like it was coming from a secure and grounded place of curiosity, but from an insecure and anxious place of fear. He was also looking for any and everything to be a sign that we were meant to be. If we both liked the same type of food, for example, that was confirmation in his mind that I was made for him and he was made for me. He was constantly bringing up that kind of stuff and pointing to it as proof that we were compatible. However, I didn't agree, at least not romantically. It was just a lot for me when I wasn't sure how I felt about him yet. It takes me time to warm up and let my guard down in most cases, and I don't want to feel rushed or pressured to connect more quickly than I am comfortable. And that's what it felt like was happening. So I ended the connection with him. The next person I want to share about is someone I'll call low confidence. He was cute, funny, and kind, but he didn't think he was cute, and he thought I was too pretty to be interested in him. He felt like there was no way to compete with everyone else, when on my end, it was never about him needing to compete with anyone. I cared about him because of the person he was. I could be my full self around him, and that's one of the things I value most. If I can be who I am, and you can be who you are, then we can be who we are together and enjoy our time together. Sadly, low confidence got fixated on what was going on in my other relationships and worried that he wasn't measuring up, that I would get bored with him and that I didn't need him because I had other relationships. I don't mind offering someone reassurance. I truly don't. That's not what this is about at all. Being a good partner to someone when they are feeling low can certainly include encouragement about why you are attracted to them. But that's a tricky dynamic to sustain if you're continually having to say that you want to be with them. Tenderly, I want to say that if your connection is wrapped up in you constantly having to offer reassurance and validation, then it's likely not going to be a fulfilling connection for you because you're so focused on making it fulfilling for the other person that you may be neglecting yourself. If that is a fulfilling connection for you, then it might be a good idea to examine why you find that fulfilling. The final person I will share about with you is someone I'll call just not feeling it. On paper, he was everything I had been wanting in one person. We connected deeply emotionally very quickly. It was easy to talk to him. We spent hours together on our first date, and it didn't feel like it was that long. We had similar backgrounds, value systems, and beliefs. We had common goals, desires, and politics. Plus, he wanted to take such good care of me, and being taken care of is something that I want. I've been in the role of caretaker for so long that it felt so good to have someone want to do that for me willingly and without complaint. All of it seemed perfect. The only problem was that I just wasn't feeling it romantically, sensually, or sexually, and that's okay. I didn't need more of a reason than that. I really respected this person and we had been out a few times, so I did let him know. If it were someone that I didn't know as well or feel as connected to, I wouldn't feel like I owed them much, if any, explanation. As I'm wrapping up this episode about when to end connections, I want to share that on January 1st this year, I ended all my conversations with people I hadn't already met. My friend who helped me in the connection with Captain Underpants encouraged me and reminded me that I have to say no to some people in order to say yes to others, because while I believe that love is abundant, I am still limited by the human experience of time and energy not being unlimited. So there may be some connections that you were interested in exploring, but you may be at your limit currently. When I messaged people to let them know I wasn't able to meet up anytime soon, I cited my polysaturation as the reason. If you're unfamiliar with the term, polysaturation is the state in which a polyamorous person has as many significant relationships as they can handle at a given time. So I personally was maxed out. And even though there were a few people I was interested in that I had not yet met, I knew I couldn't keep investing time, energy, and effort into those connections and still show up and be fully present in the connections I had with people I'd already met. Personally, I've had very lovely experiences as far as receptivity when I've needed to end a connection. The people I've connected with are generally good humans, so they have responded well. And the way someone responds can give you so much data on the type of person you were connecting with. If they handle it well, maybe that can leave the door open for reconnecting if you both are interested in the future. I will close out with a reminder about getting curious if you felt yourself getting defensive about any of the scenarios I shared. If you see yourself in one of these situations, just know that I see parts of myself in some of these situations too, like the anxious attachment and low confidence. So again, just an invitation to ask why. Thank you so much for tuning in for this second episode of So You Think You Can Date. Make sure to subscribe to the So You Think You Can Date podcast, rate and review the show on all the platforms, and share this episode with someone that you think would enjoy it and who is ready to do dating differently. Also, pre-order my new book, Coming of Age and Coming Out, Stories of Repressed and Reclaimed Sexual Desire. Pre-order it today by visiting nickipappas.com/shop. Coming of Age and Coming Out is a collection of stories about coming of age from childhood through adolescence and then coming out in my 30s as queer and non-monogamous. It will be released in June 2025. With your pre-order purchase, you will receive a free download of the Come Alive guide in your inbox. If you want to follow my writing, you can subscribe to my Substack that is called Coming Alive, where I write about pursuing all that makes us come alive. Per the Howard Thurman quote, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." Follow me on Instagram at Broadening the Narrative, which is the account I started in 2019 to document my journey in broadening the narratives or stories that I was taught about myself and about others. Come back next week for an episode about how to quit playing games in dating so that you can make mutually fulfilling connections.